Sam C. Story time with Dora. That was Mesa Verde we was looking at the beginning there. Journey to the center of the earth, part 37. And after the Mesa Verde Park, we decided to come up to Mancos State Park, and we just gonna hang out here for a bit. We're gonna sit here for a bit, and then we'll skydive on in, and then we'll go for a little spin down the road, and who knows where it ends up. I sure don't, that's for sure. Okay, now this story, Journey to the Center of the Earth. When we left this sucker off, they had finally gotten off of the inland sea. They got through the big old storm, and they finally back on land, and the professor was all excited because they can now resume their journey into the center of the earth by land. So we'll pick it up right there. My dear uncle, I began, in a hesitating kind of way, allow me to ask one question. Certainly, Harry. A dozen, if you think proper. One will suffice. How about getting back? I asked. How about getting back? What a question to ask. We have not as yet reached the end of our journey. I know that. All I want to know is how you propose we shall manage the return voyage. It is the most simple manner in the world, said the imperturbable professor. Imperturbable? When did he become imperturbable? Once we reach the exact center of this sphere, either we shall find a new road by which to ascend to the surface, or we shall simply turn around and go back by the way we came. I have every reason to believe that while we are traveling forward, it will not close behind us. Then, one of the first matters to see to will be to repair the raft, was my rather melancholy response. Of course, we must attend to that. Above all things, continued the professor. Then comes the all-important question of provisions, I urged. Have we anything like enough left to enable us to accomplish such amazing designs as you contemplate carrying out? Oh, see, we're rolling already. We dove right in, and we're rolling away. I think the most exciting part coming up here, we're going to stop at the garbage can. Ooh, stop it, I tell you, stop it. No, I shall not. I have seen into the matter, and my answer is in the affirmative. Hans is a very clever fellow, and I have reason to believe that he has saved the greater part of the cargo. But the best way to satisfy your scruples is to come and judge for yourself. Saying which, he led the way out of the kind of open grotto in which we had taken shelter. I had almost begun to hope that which I should rather have feared, and this was the impossibility of such a shipwreck, leaving even the slightest signs of what it had carried as freight. I was, however, thoroughly mistaken. As soon as I reached the shores of this inland sea, I found Hans standing gravely in the midst of a large number of things laid out in complete order. My uncle wrung his hands with deep and silent gratitude. His heart was too full for speech. This man, whose superhuman devotion to his employers I not only never saw surpassed, nor even equaled, had been hard at work all the time we slept, and, at the risk of his life, had succeeded in saving the most precious articles of our cargo. See, I'm telling you, we got to get that shirt made up. Be like Hans. Of course, under the circumstances, we necessarily experienced several severe losses. Our weapons had wholly vanished, but experience had taught us to do without them. The provision of powder had, however, remained intact, after having narrowly escaped blowing us all to atoms in the storm. "Well," said the professor, who was now ready to make the best of everything, "as we have no guns, all we have to do is give up all idea of hunting." "Yes, my dear sir, we can do without them. But what about all our instruments?" "Here is the manometer, the most useful of all, and which I gladly accept in lieu of the rest. With it alone, I can calculate the depth as we proceed. By its means alone, I shall be able to decide when we have reached the center of the earth. Ha ha! But for this little instrument, we might make a mistake and run the risk of coming out at the antipodes." All this was said amidst bursts of unnatural laughter. "By the compass!" I cried. "Without that, what can we do?" "Here it is, safe and sound," he cried, with real joy. "Aha! And here we have the chronometer and the thermometers. Hans the hunter is indeed an invaluable man." It was impossible to deny this fact. As far as the nautical and other instruments were concerned, nothing was wanting. Then, on further examination, I found ladders, cords, pickaxes, crowbars, and shovels, all scattered about the shore. There was, however, finally, the most important question of all, and that was provisions. "But what are we to do for food?" I asked. "Let us see to the commensurate department." "Commensurate, yup," replied my uncle gravely. "The boxes which contained our supply of food for the voyage were placed in a row along the strand, and were in a capital state of preservation. The sea had, in every case, respected their contents, and to sum up in one sentence, taking into consideration biscuits, salt, meat, shadum, and dried fish, we could still calculate on having about 4 months' supply, if used with prudence and caution." "4 months!" cried the sanguine professor in high glee. "Then we shall have plenty of time both to go and to come. And with that remains, I undertake to give a grand dinner to my colleagues of the Johanneum." I sighed. I should by this time have used myself to the temperament of my uncle. And yet this man astonished me more and more every day. He was the greatest human enigma I have ever known. "Now," said he, "before we do anything else, we must lay in a stock of fresh water. The rain has fallen in abundance and filled the hollows of the granite. There's a rich supply of water, and we have no fear of suffering from thirst, which is our circumstances is of the last importance. As far as the raft, I shall recommend Hans to repair it to the best of all his abilities, though I have every reason to believe we shall not require it again." "How is that?" I cried, more amazed than ever at my uncle's style of reasoning. "I have an idea, my dear boy. It is none other than this simple fact. We shall not come out by the same opening as that by which we entered. I began to look at my uncle with vague suspicion. An idea had more than once taken possession of me, and this was that we was going mad. And yet, little did I think how true and prophetic his words were doomed to be. "And now," he said, "having seen to all these matters of detail, to breakfast." I followed him to a sort of projecting cape. After he had given his last instructions to our guide, in his original position, with dried meat, biscuit, and a delicious cup of tea, we made a satisfactory meal. I may say one of the most welcome and pleasant I have ever remembered. Exhaustion, the keen atmosphere, the state of calm after so much agitation, all contributed to give me an excellent appetite. Indeed, it contributed very much to producing a pleasant and cheerful state of mind. While breakfast was in hand, and between the sips of warm tea, I asked my uncle if he had any idea of how he now stood in relation to the world above. For my part, I added, I think it will be rather difficult to determine. "Well, if we were compelled to fix the exact spot," said my uncle, "it might be difficult, since during the 3 days of that awful tempest I could keep no account, either of the quickness of our pace or the direction in which the raft was going. Still, we will endeavor to approximate the truth. We shall not, I believe, be so very far out." "Well, if I recollect rightly," I replied, "our last observation was made at the Geyser Island." "Harry's Island, my boy, Harry's Island. Do not decline the honor of having named it. Given your name to an island discovered by us, the first human beings who trod it since the creation of the world? Let it be so, then. At Harry's Island, we had already gone over 270 miles of sea, and we were, I believe, about 600 leagues, more or less, from Iceland." "Good! I'm glad to see that you remember so well. Let us start from that point, and let us count 4 days of storm, during which our rate of travel must have been very great. I should say that our velocity must have been about 80 leagues to the 24 hours. All right, let's stop and take a look and see what's happening here. This is kind of an interesting little bit here, and I don't show a lot of it because there was a kid, I don't know, probably about maybe a 10 or 12-year-old boy there. He was lost. He was part of that the Dude Ranch over there, and he must have taken a mountain bike trail and got disoriented, and he flagged us down on the road and was looking for a little assistance as to where he should go. And you know, he was only a half a mile or so away, so I wasn't too worried about him. But it would be a little concerning for the little guy. But he made it. We made sure we didn't lose sight of him too far there before he turned into where he needed to go. Okay, here we go. Let's get back to this. He had about 80 leagues to the 24 hours. I agreed that I thought this a fair calculation. There were, then, 300 leagues to be added to the grand total. Yes, and the central... Oh, boy. Yes. All right, let's take another look at this drive. Let's see what we're doing. So we leaving the Mancos State Park and we's heading back down the road towards Mancos. And it's not shaky. It's there's something wrong with your internet feed. It really isn't shaking like that. I agreed. Okay. Yes, and the Central Sea must extend at least 600 leagues from side to side. Do you know, my boy Harry, that we have discovered an inland lake larger than the Mediterranean? Certainly. And we only know of its extent in one way. It may be hundreds of miles in length. Very likely. Then, said I, after calculating for some minutes, if your provisions are right, we are at this moment exactly under the Mediterranean itself. Do you think so? Yes, I'm almost certain of it. Are we not 900 leagues distant from the Reykjavik? That is perfectly true, and a famous bit of road we have traveled, my boy. But why? We should be under the Mediterranean more than under Turkey or the Atlantic Ocean. Can only be known when we are sure of not having deviated from our course. And of this we know nothing. I do not think we were driven very far from our course. The wind appears to me to have been always about the same. My opinion is that this shore must be situated to the southeast of Port Gretchen. Good, I hope so. It will, however, be easy to decide the matter by taking the bearings from our departure by means of the compass. Come along, and we will consult that invaluable invention. All right, let's take a look. Okay, yeah, this is the road that comes up from the main road from Mancos, where you turn up to the Mancos State Park. And if like I say there, if you don't like narrow roads that are steep and stuff, because in this section here, it's easily an 8%, 9% grade. It doesn't last very long, but it's certainly there, and you know it spooked us out a little bit. All right, let's get back to the story. The professor now walked eagerly in the direction of the rock where the indefatigable Hans had placed the instruments in safety. My uncle was gay and light-hearted. See, gay used to mean something different. Okay, he rubbed his hands and assumed all sorts of attitudes. He was, to all appearances, once more a young man. Since I had known him, never had I seen him be so amiable and pleasant. I followed him, rather curious to know whether I had made any mistakes in my estimation of our position. As soon as we had reached the rock, my uncle took the compass, placed it horizontally before him, and looked keenly at the needle. As he had at first shaken it to give it vivacity, it oscillated considerably, and then slowly assumed its right position under the influence of the magnetic power. See, here we're at the main road, and I keep saying main road, but I don't know, I can't remember what it is. Yeah, the direction behind us goes to Mancos, and the direction in front of us, where we're going, it's a cutoff road that ends up over at McPhee Reservoir, just outside of Dolores. And I believe we's heading up to a place called Mavriso. And it's another really nice campground, and I think we're probably gonna end up with that one eventually here. in a couple more. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end of this book. We'll probably end it at Mavriso. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. Under the influence of the magnetic power, the professor bent his eyes curiously over the wondrous instrument. A violent start immediately showed the extent of his emotion. He closed his eyes, rubbed them, and took another and keener survey. Then he turned slowly round to me, stupefaction depicted on his countenance. "What is the matter?" said I, beginning to be alarmed. He could not speak. He was too overwhelmed for words. He simply pointed to the instrument. I examined it eagerly, according to his mute directions, and a loud cry of surprise escaped my lips. The needle of the compass pointed due north, in the direction we expected was the south. It pointed to the shore instead of the high seas. I shook the compass. I examined it with a curious and anxious eye. It was in a state of perfection. No blemish in any way explained the phenomenon. Whatever position we forced the needle into, it returned invariably to the same unexpected point. It was useless to attempt to conceal from ourselves the fatal truth. There could be no doubt about it. Unwelcome as was the fact that during the tempest there had been a sudden slant of wind, of which we had been unable to take any account, and thus the raft had carried us back to the shores we had left, apparently forever, so many days before. Oh, my word, you're all right back at Port Gretchen. That's the end of the chapter. That's the end of the chapter. Let's take a look at this road. Oh, it's a much nicer road now. You know, if this was one of those channels that's full of good information, you'd be getting it right now. Now, it's a beautiful little cutoff road, and it cuts. You don't have to go through Cortez then. And it developed pretty good in this area. There's a lot of nice places up here, and some nice little ranch land kind of thing. And the road's in good condition. We really kind of like that road. Okay, new chapter, chapter 34, A Voyage of Discovery. It would be altogether impossible for me to give any idea of the utter astonishment which overcame the professor on making this extraordinary discovery. Amazement, incredulity, and rage were blended in such a way as to alarm me. During the whole course of my life, I had never seen a man at first so chapfallen and then so furiously indignant. The terrible fatigues of our sea voyage, the fearful dangers we had passed through, had all gone for nothing. We had to begin them all over again. Instead of progressing as we fondly expected during a voyage of so many days, we had retreated. Every hour of our expedition on the raft had been so much lost time. Presently, however, the indomitable energy of my uncle overcame every other consideration. "So," he said between his set teeth, "fatality will play me these terrible tricks. The elements themselves conspire to overwhelm me with mortification. Air, fire, and water combine their united efforts to oppose my passage. Well, they shall see what the earnest will of a determined man can do. I will not yield. I will not retreat even 1 inch. And we shall see who shall triumph in this great contest, man or nature." Okay, I had to take a break there to to shoo off the kitty. So I couldn't take it anymore. I had to look up to see what this road was. It's Colorado 184, and it's a cutoff road that goes between, basically between Dolores and Mancos. So there you have it, folks. Now the channel has transformed into one of those informative ones. Tell all your friends. Hold back the storm. All right. Now, let's get back to the story. Standing upright on a rock, irritated and menacing, Professor Hardwig, like the ferocious Ajax, seemed to defy the fates. I, however, took upon myself to interfere and to impose some sort of check upon such insensate enthusiasm. "Listen to me, uncle," I said in a firm but temperate tone of voice. "There must be some limit to ambition here below. It is utterly useless to struggle against the impossible. Pray, listen to reason. We are utterly unprepared for a sea voyage. It is simple madness to think of performing a journey of 500 leagues upon a wrecked pile of beams with a counterpane for a sail, a paltry stick for a mast, and a tempest to contend with, as we are totally incapable of steering our frail craft. We shall become the mere plaything of the storm, and it is acting the part of madmen if we, a second time, run any risk upon this dangerous and treacherous Central Sea. These are only a few of the reasons and arguments I put together. Reasons and arguments which to me appeared unanswerable. I was allowed to go on without interruption for about 10 minutes. The explanation to this I soon discovered. The professor was not even listening, and did not hear a word of all my eloquence. "To the raft!" he cried in a hoarse voice when I paused for a reply. Such was the result of my strenuous effort to resist his iron will. I tried again. I begged and implored him. I got into a passion, but I had to deal with a will more determined than my own. I seemed to feel like the waves which fought and battled against a huge mass of granite at our feet, which had smiled grimly for so many ages at their puny efforts. Hans, meanwhile, without taking part in our discussion, had been repairing the raft. One would have supposed that he instinctively guessed at the further projects of my uncle. By means of some fragments of cordage, he had again made the raft seaworthy. While I had been speaking, he had hoisted a new mast and sail, the latter already fluttering and waving in the breeze. The worthy professor spoke a few words to our imperturbable guide, who immediately began to put our baggage on board and to prepare for our departure. The atmosphere was now tolerably clear and pure, and the northeast wind blew steadily and serenely. It appeared likely to last for some time. What then could I do? Could I undertake to resist the iron will of 2 men? It was simply impossible. Even if I could have hoped for the support of Hans, this, however, was out of the question. It appeared to me that the Icelander had set aside all personal will and identity. He was a picturesque, Oh, it was a picture of abnegation. All right, guys, this is getting too difficult, so we're going to wrap it up right there for today. Boy, oh boy, they're not actually going to get on that dang boat and go again, are they? Thank you so much for coming along, and we're going to get a little further next time. I'm betting we're going to go to Mavriso. Sam C. Oh, that is a nice little campsite there. We're still using the clam at this point. Okay, Rosie. Yeah, you go, girl. You show us how it's done. That's how you enjoy a day. Right there. Professor Hardwick, take some lessons from Rosie.